So the irony of this story is that I'm currently waiting on a police investigation into another Let's Not Meet post I made a few weeks ago. After I notified the police about the creepy encounter that I had, I went on vacation with my family to attend a family reunion in another state. Now my family is Asian, and when gathered forms a cluster of about 20 loud Asian people who literally never leave each other's sides for the duration of our reunions. We always travel in herds, and we're always secure in our obnoxious caravans of watchful Vietnamese paranoids. So of all times to encounter a creep, this was the last place I ever expected to feel unsafe. Last night, we went to a Chinese buffet that was jam-packed with people. At one point in the evening, I got up to go use the restroom. I had already used the restroom when we first arrived at the restaurant to wash our hands, so even though it was in the very back corner of the buffet, down a secluded corridor and down the corner even, I knew the main bathroom door was propped open, so I didn't think anything of it. I walked down the corridor to use the restroom, and noticed a short but extremely muscular Latino guy sort of hovering in the hallways. As I passed him by, he began to walk behind me. Again, I thought nothing of it, but as I approached the woman's bathroom, I saw that there was no men's room in the corridor, so why was this guy seemingly trailing me? The woman's door was still propped open, however, so avoiding eye contact, I scuttled in with relief, thinking that was the end of it. In the span of the second it took me to walk from the open doorway to the very back stall, I knew two things. One, there was no one else in the bathroom. There were only 2 stalls and the other was empty. And 2, the man from the hallway had followed me into the bathroom. Just as I shut and locked the stall door, he closed the bathroom door behind him. Now I was panicking. I stand there behind my stall door and stare at him through the crack in the stall. He stands by the sinks quietly, staring back. Then he turns, and I don't know why a public stalled restroom had this, turns the lock on the door. At this point I back away from the stall, because I'm convinced he's going to crawl underneath it at any moment. I text my oldest cousin. The rest of the kids are under 14. I tell him to get a manager and come to the restroom now because I'm trapped in the bathroom with some man. I then dial 911 with my phone sandwiched between my ear and shoulder. I pick up the lid of the toilet bowl to defend myself in case the guy tried to crawl under. Don't judge, I saw it happen in a movie. The phone starts to ring. At this point, neither the man nor I have said a word. I should have done something like say I was calling 911, but honestly I was too petrified to even speak, which I'm kicking myself over thinking about it now. I should have started screaming, but I had this subconscious paralyzing fear that it would propel him into action or something, so I just stand there, holding the toilet lid while watching him through the crack in the door. Suddenly I could hear my cousin outside, banging on the door and shouting. He's telling some staff member from the restaurant that the door is locked, and I can hear the jingling of keys. This was a really old, cheap door, like an airplane bathroom door. This was enough to freak the man out, because suddenly he turned, unlocked the door, and bolted right out of the restaurant. My cousin and I told the owner of the restaurant what happened, but he honestly doesn't seem to give any shits. He acted like we were hassling him because nothing really had happened. He just waved us off, impatiently saying, I got it. I'm still freaked out by that encounter. It's chilling to think about bad things happening in the middle of the most crowded, loudest restaurant imaginable, with all of your family just a few feet from you. And telling the story now, it seems improbable that someone wouldn't have come in, or wouldn't have heard me, but I was so scared that I don't think I could have even screamed. Thank God I brought my phone with me, because everyone texts while they pee. Anyway, the moral of the story is, don't let your guard down, even in the most public of places. One shut door can turn the most innocuous, crowded place into a room of total creepiness and fear. I posted this elsewhere a few years ago on Reddit for another thread, but I thought the story was good enough for this sub too. I'm a female, and I was 16 when this happened years ago. There were 2 incidents that happened before the really scary one. We lived in a fairly new residential neighborhood, and night, about 10 p.m., I was laying down in bed doing some homework when I heard this tapping or scratching at my window. My mother wasn't home that night, and my father was already deep asleep. I jumped out of bed and ran into his room. "Dad, someone is outside tapping on my window." My dad thought I was being a hysterical teenager. He peeked out the window and said, it was probably a tree branch or something. Then he went right back to bed. My father is a lazy bastard, I tell you. He couldn't even be bothered to go look out my window or outside, never mind the fact that there were no bushes or trees near enough to touch the window. I was creeped out, but I double-checked that no one could see into my bedroom and that the curtains covered everything, and I tried to go back to bed. A few weeks later, I'm sitting in the living room, and it's just me and my mom at home. I had just finished taking a shower, and I was lounging in a towel while talking to my mom and painting my toenails. Suddenly, we both heard a tapping and scratching noise at the side window. My mom was pissed. She immediately jumped up and went outside, where she confronted a man that was standing there. The man walked off, and she ran into the house and called the police. The police came and they caught the guy a few blocks away. My mom identified him as the man who was peeking into the window. The man claimed he was just back there between the houses because he had to take a leak. "Okay, so if you took a leak, where's the urine?" the police said. There was none. He was hauled off to jail for at least trespassing. I'm not sure if he was charged with being a peeping Tom or not. Fast forward about a month later. I woke up in the middle of the night because my cat had suddenly jumped off the bed. I heard a slight noise in the hallway. I tiptoed up to my bedroom door and peeked out. There he was, the man who had been peeking. All I could hear was the thumping of my own heart racing. The moment I saw him, he was standing in the doorway of my little sister's room with a gun in his hand. He was just starting to close the door. He had a gun in one hand and a bag in the other. That wasn't the room he wanted. I was sure I was about to die a horrible death after being raped. I've never had an adrenaline rush so big in my life, not even years later, when I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane to skydive a few times. I was suddenly and powerfully alert. I'm telling you, I felt like I had super strength, hearing, and sight. It might be my imagination, but I swear I could hear and smell better than normal, the effect of all that adrenaline in my system. Within a few seconds, I considered my options. Scream. He had a gun. My father would come running out and get shot. Hide in the closet or under the bed. He'd find me. Try and fight him. Again, he had a gun. This was before cell phones, and I didn't have a phone in my room. So without any hesitation, I quickly opened my window and jumped out, bare feet onto the gravel. I'm the kind of girl with zero upper body strength, and yet I was still able to get up and out that window, quietly and quickly. Landing on the gravel in my bare feet didn't even hurt a tiny bit. Did I mention that I was completely nude? Yeah, I slept in the nude. What can I say? It was summer and very warm. I ran balls out about 3 houses down to a neighbor's house and banged on the door. Let me tell you, as a 16-year-old girl, the thought of anyone seeing you naked is horrifying beyond belief. But in that moment, I didn't care for 1 second. I went 3 houses down because I didn't want the man to hear me banging on a door. When I didn't get an immediate response, I went to the next house and banged on their door. The whole time I was terrified for my family. Finally, someone at this house answered the door quickly. I just got out. "There's a man in my house. Call the police." They called 911, and the police were there very fast. They came in without lights and sirens, and they caught the guy in the house in my room. This is what he brought with him. A gun, a bag, rape kit, that included rope, tape, 2 X-Acto knives, a couple of dildos, bondage porn magazines, bleach, condoms, and maybe some other stuff I can't remember off the top of my head. Luckily, it never went to court. He did a plea bargain and got 25 to life for a whole slew of charges. He's still in prison, and will be for the rest of his life, because a few years after going to jail, he got a life sentence for committing murder while inside prison. The DA who handled my case called to tell me, thank God. I didn't sleep well again for a number of years. I would wake up numerous times per night at the slightest noise or even hint of sound. It wasn't until I got a dog that I was able to sleep. I let my dog do his job, warn me of any noise, and now I can rest peacefully. It didn't hurt that I also got a gun, and I always keep it near me when I sleep. I took a gun safety class, some lessons, and I go to the range every month without fail. I'll kill any motherfucker who comes into my house in the night. So this happened a little over 2 years ago now, and I wanted to post it somewhere just to look back on it one day and never forget the lesson I learned. It was 2016, and I had just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, Michael, got me this job. For a few days I did training with the owner in the mornings. For 2 nights Michael trained me. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Nothing particularly exciting, just checking guests in and doing paperwork. My boss, the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which attributed to the swift training I had to endure. So it was my first night alone on the night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property, and large glass windows all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night window like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night, at about 1 a.m. I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork when a man walked in and asked if we had any rooms available. Usually if someone is sketchy, my boss has me lie and say no, but he seemed normal at the moment. Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course, just for one?" He replied yes, so I began creating the reservation on the computer when I noticed he started swatting the air and making spitting noises, as if he was being surrounded by flies. I tried to ignore it. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't my business. I tried to just check him into the room as quickly as possible. I gave him his key and he was on his way. At this point in time, I could be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can all understand my reaction to what happens next. The man comes back from his room and slams his hand on the glass door, which causes me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I look up to see him just staring at me. He cracks the door and puts his head through. "I can't get into my room. Why won't you let me into my room?" My only defense is trying to be helpful, so I replied, "Maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me give you another one." The look he had in his eyes was inexplicable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key, and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he was the one who trained me. Though it was in the middle of the night and he was asleep, I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back, and I go into absolute panic mode. I run into the back office and lock the door. I pull out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection when you're working at night. I hear the man in the office yelling, "Hello? Hello? Why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" Me being an absolute idiot and not standing my ground and calling the police when I'm feeling scared, I decided to take on this situation alone. I reply, "I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out." I then start calling Michael over and over for help. No answer. I decided to take a few deep breaths and then step out of the office. The man was not there. He was in the bathroom. I could hear him talking to himself, angrily saying, "Kill her. Kill her." My heart sank. Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he comes out and I say, "Your key was broken. I'm sorry. Let me escort you to your room." He agrees, thankfully. I'm wearing my long-sleeved sweater, so with my arms down I was able to hide my knife in my hand while still holding it. I begin to walk outside, and he seemed very insistent to walk behind me. We begin making our way to the staircase and up towards his room. I was sweating from how nervous I was, constantly looking behind me to make sure he wasn't going to make a move. He stops at a room, and I stop at his room a few doors down. I smile and say, "Oh, that's the wrong room. This is yours," as it clearly said on the door. The whole time he was going to someone else's room, trying to open the door. I felt bad for them. I quickly ran back to the office and locked up. The next guest I checked in was a police officer from a few towns away. I felt bad for confiding in them about the guy, but they seemed willing to keep an eye and ear out. The next night the man came back, but I had the doors locked and told him we were all booked up. I explained to my boss what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't take me seriously. I continued to work there on the night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters happened as well. This is a long post, but a completely true incident that I experienced this past week. I feel that each detail included is important to the story. This past Friday, I, 27 and male, fell asleep around 8 p.m. after work. When I woke up around 9, I decided it was too late to go out, so I made a plan to run to the gym down the street instead for a late-night workout. The small all-men's gym is just about a mile down the road. It was empty and dark inside, but the owner had given me the door code to get in. That night, for whatever reason, the code did not work, and I couldn't get inside. I still wanted to get a workout in though, so I decided I'd just extend my run. I'd head up to the local middle school playground and do some pull-ups on the monkey bars or something. I figured it was better than no workout at all, at least. I got to the block that the middle school was on and began walking down towards the playground. On the way there, I passed two young girls, walking the opposite way. I would guess they were both about 11 to 12 years old. They were silent and looked at me nervously as we passed. It was understandable, as I'm a reasonably large man standing at 6'4", and it was almost 10 p.m. at night on an empty street. I live in a little suburban town of about 12,000 people, with very little crime. It's a dry town, and mostly larger residential homes. The town is only 2 miles across, and has a very safe family feel. Most of the residents are upper-class families here to take advantage of the great school system. Despite the reputation of safety the town has, though, I thought it was much too late and dark out for these two young girls to be wandering the streets alone. Creeps can show up anywhere anytime after all. It's something I would soon enough witness to be true. All I remember is thinking to myself, I hope they're headed home right now. I then got to the playground attached to the middle school. The playground is on the corner of the block, with an alley leading to a parking lot behind the school, separating the playground from the local high-speed line going into the nearby city about 10 miles away. The high-speed line is built underground, with an open top and high walls topped up with a chain-link fence to keep pedestrians from falling in. There's a bridge to cross the tracks below, and then another street on the other side of the tracks from the school, running parallel to the rails with one way going to the downtown business district, and the other way going into a residential neighborhood. The young girls turned onto this street going toward the neighborhood, away from downtown. I did one set of pull-ups on the monkey bars in between reps, and was resting, when I noticed a white pickup truck with the headlights cut, and a raised cab with blacked-out windows covering the bed of the pickup truck, moving slowly past the middle school in the same direction the girls were going moments before. I found this very suspicious. Even more so once the truck stopped directly in front of the playground, almost as though the driver was checking it out. I stared at the truck, wondering what was going on, when I noticed that there was a man walking about 20 feet behind the truck in the same direction. As he passed by the stopped truck, the window rolled down, and I could see there were 2 men inside. I clearly saw the man walking look over and made a keep going forward hand signal to the driver. The truck immediately followed his directions and started moving again, creeping slowly along the street with the headlights cut just as they were before. I watched as they crossed the tracks and saw the man on foot go right to the parallel road along the tracks towards downtown. The truck went left on the same street toward the residential neighborhood, in the same direction those young girls had gone less than 3 minutes before. What the fuck did I just witness? I thought to myself as I tried to make sense of what I had just seen. To me, it seemed like the truck and man on foot were following those girls. They stopped at the playground to see if they went there, and kept going when they only saw me doing pull-ups. I felt sick to my stomach. I tried to think of what else these men could have been up to. Looking for a lost dog? No, they weren't calling out, and were driving much too slowly. Making a drug deal? Maybe, but what kind of drug deal goes down in a well-lit school area? Also, the man on foot signaling the truck forward, and then going opposite ways down the next cross street did not make sense for a drug deal. In my head, I thought that at best what I saw was some kind of illegal activity. At worst, it was predators stalking 2 young girls. I decided to follow the man on foot to find out. I followed him as he walked along the wall separating the sidewalk from the tracks below. On the other side of the street was a church and some office buildings. He was walking slowly and texting someone on his phone. I turned around and saw that the truck had stopped again about 2 blocks up the road. The man on foot then completely stopped as I approached him. I couldn't be sure as to whether he realized I was following him, so I approached in the most casual way possible. The man looked to be in his early 30s, stood about 5'10" with a slouch, and had curly hair with a noticeable scar going down the side of his head through his hair. From the moment I began speaking to this man, I could tell he was very nervous. The way he acted and talked made me even more suspicious, up until the conclusion of our conversation. Admittedly, my adrenaline was going, so I don't remember word for word, but below is an approximation of how it went down. "Hey, what's up, man? What are you doing?" "Not much, just hanging out." "Just hanging out, huh? Where are you going?" "Just going on a walk." "Hey, I saw you signal that sketchy truck back by the playground. That was kinda weird. What's up with that?" "Nothing at all. I just waved to them as they walked by, you know." "You didn't just wave to them. I saw you make a hand signal for them to keep going." "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know that person." At this point, I started to get very annoyed. "I'm not stupid. I clearly saw you make them a signal. I know that you know them. Just tell me what you're really doing out here, because that was very suspicious." "I'm not up to anything. Just walk and talk with me about it." At this point, I put a hand on the man's shoulder. "No. Stop and tell me what you're up to right now. You're acting suspicious, and you're making me nervous. I know you're up to something, so just tell me the truth. I don't care if you're buying drugs. I do them myself as well. I only casually smoke weed, but I was trying to get him to open up to me." "I'm not up to anything, man, I swear. I'm a good Christian man, I swear." He pointed at the church across the street. "I didn't ask what your religion was or whether you're a good person. I asked what the fuck you and that sketchy truck are up to. Now you want to tell me, or should I call the police?" The man then turned and started walking away again, faster this time. I admit that I was quite angry at this point, as I knew I was clearly being lied to, and the man was definitely up to no good. I pushed him, not very hard, with one arm to get him to stop. The man lost his balance and almost fell over, but he immediately started sprinting away from me down the street. He turned the corner and continued to sprint into the downtown business district, passing right by a few other pedestrians on the street. There was no reason for me to chase after him at this point, so I lost sight of him as he ran away. I looked back, and the truck down the road that was stopped at the beginning of the confrontation had driven away. I then took out my cell phone and called the non-emergency police line to report everything I had seen. The police thanked me and sent a patrol car to the area by the middle school. When I told my girlfriend about what happened, she was obviously very upset with me for following and confronting the man. However, after I saw what I saw, I'm convinced that I witnessed 3 men stalking those young girls with the intent to do them harm. I cannot come up with any other explanation as to what could have possibly been going on. Seeing how nervous the man was talking to me, paired with how he lied and then took off running, only convinced me further. I followed my gut instinct and took action. I would do it all again. However, I would have called the police before confronting the man myself if I could redo this whole thing. My girlfriend's concern was for my safety. Although I was much bigger than the man, and made sure he was at least arm's length of me at all times, he could have easily been armed, so I understand my girlfriend's concern. At the very least, I hope I helped those girls out. As for the creep that ran away from me, let's not meet again.